A young man went into his religious class in college, and he raised his hand, and the professor acknowledged him. "What's your question?" The young man said, "What makes Christianity so special? What makes it think itself to be so unique from all the religions of the world?" That's when the professor looked at the young man and said, "Young man, it can boil down to one word, and that word is grace. Every other religion is predicated on what you do for God. Christianity is predicated on what God has done for man, and that word is summarized in the one word called grace." The verse says, grow in grace. That is, grow in your understanding, grow in your experience and your utilization of grace. I don't want you to look at the word merely as a theological term, but as an atmospheric environment. Sort of like adjusting your thermostat in the room and it changes the temperature of the room. Grace is an atmosphere in which you live and move and function. When you reduce it to a theological concept, you may know the data but not have the experience. So it is an atmosphere. It is an environment in which you are to understand and in which you are to operate. Grace is like soil. It says grow in grace, like you grow vegetables, grow out of the soil of grace. It is unfortunate that so many people do not functionally understand the term. Grace is critical to go to heaven, but grace is also critical to get heaven to you. You see, the whole thing is grace. There is a major difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Fundamental differences. The New Covenant, New Testament, the Bible calls it a grace covenant, a grace arrangement, a grace way of operating, as opposed to the Old Covenant, which is called a law way of operating. Far too many people, even Christians, are still operating out of an old and never having transferred to the new. When I get on a plane, I watch people around me pull out their computers to do their work while I pull out my yellow pad. I pull out my yellow pad and I'm working and working and working, or studying or whatever it is, and I'm writing on my yellow pad. But most everyone around me has a computer. You see, because the age of technology in which we live has graduated from a yellow pad to a computer. I have not. I am still stuck in the old covenant of pencils, pens, and yellow pieces of paper to function. While most everyone I know has moved on to the age of technology and computers. So when I mess up a word, I gotta scratch through it and rewrite it. Folk next to me are pushing buttons talking about cancel. When I mess up a paragraph, I gotta rewrite the whole paragraph. They make it disappear in a second. All because I'm stuck in the way it's always been. Have not graduated into the new world in which it is. The reason why So many Christians are not experiencing what God wants us to experience, is that we are stuck in a system God is no longer operating in. We haven't made the transfer from the old covenant to the new covenant, and that new covenant is called grace. Now, the reason why grace is critical for the non-Christian, it gets you to heaven, the message of grace. But for the Christian, it gives you victory. It provides the mechanism for peace. It is the mechanism for joy. It is the mechanism for power. And all of that flows through this one word called grace. That's why Peter wants you to grow in understanding it, grow in accepting it, and grow in functioning in it, so you can get more benefit from it. Because as you'll see as we go along, you can cancel out what grace has to offer. So what many people don't know is they come to church while canceling out the benefit of grace. And therefore, not understanding the term or what it means and how it is to be applied to their lives, they can literally live in defeat while being more religious than ever. So, if it has become too much work being a Christian, then you need to know about grace. If your Christian life is miserable, even though you want to be a good Christian, you need to understand grace. Because it is God's liberating word. One word. But when you grow, it's like a pregnant woman. It's going to all show up after a while. Because grace will expand and expand and expand to give you more experience of God's reality operating in your life. It is the key word for your existence. To understand grace is like a person moving to a new culture. Someone coming from overseas and now living in our country. Maybe they didn't speak English, but now they've got to learn a new language. Maybe they weren't used to freedom, and now they've got to know that they have more freedoms here than they had in their homeland. But it's not natural. They got to get used to it. You got to get used to grace. Because grace is not how the world works. That's not how we function in our everyday life. We function through work and earning and effort. We do things to make things better. That's how we roll. But grace is a different culture. It operates out of a different frame of reference. And so Peter says, I want you to grow in your understanding of this thing, because when you do, you will find its ability to change things, to blow your mind, literally. So what does grace mean? The Greek word charis means to show favor. It meant to show favor. So a substitute, a synonym for the word grace is favor. But it was used of a superior showing favor to an inferior. It would be the king showing favor to a peasant. And so it would be somebody up there doing something for somebody down here that the somebody down here couldn't get done on their own, apart from the somebody up here making it happen. And so it meant to show favor. A more direct definition is grace is unmerited favor. In other words, you don't earn it. You can't earn grace. A even bigger definition is grace is the inexhaustible supply of God's goodness, whereby he does for us what we could never do for ourselves. It is the inexhaustible. It has no end to it. It is the inexhaustible favor or goodness of God doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, what we do not deserve, what we could not earn, and what we never could repay. It is what God does for us, independent of us. Grace emanates from God to us without us. It is a whole new world of operating. But it's a world we're not used to. And unfortunately, it is a world we're not trained to operate in. And so we wind up either not operating in it at all or operating dually. Now, the folks who know me know that I have a flip phone. It's a flip phone. I don't appreciate you laughing at me. It's a flip phone. I don't appreciate it. Most of my phone calls come to this phone. This is my general use operating tool. I roll with this phone. This is how I roll. Okay, y'all don't have to carry it that far. Okay? People who call me on my flip phone. Now, technology is beyond this. This is what you call old school. Okay? It's my flip phone. But works for me, you know. It rings, people talk, I talk back. You know why I still have a flip phone? Because I've always had one. I'm used to it. I'm comfortable with it. Because this is me. But I also have an iPhone. Now, my iPhone is what's happening now. This phone is only used for certain people to call me on. I don't give out this general number. I give out my flip phone number. And when I call somebody with my iPhone, it shows no caller number. There is no number. So you can't call me back on this phone. So don't even think it. But the reason why I had to get this phone, even though I have this phone, is this phone is limited in what it can do. See, I can't get text on this phone. I can't even push a speaker button on this phone. But I've been with it so long, and I've been so used to it, that I don't want to give it up, even though I don't need it. See, I don't need it, because this phone will do what this phone does, but so much more. So everybody's trying to get me to grow in iPhone-ness, so that I can maximize a tool that I have that I hardly use. Now, I must concur, I have grown a little bit. I now receive a text that I cannot receive on this phone. I will now, after years, respond to a text with a text. I will do that. My staff sends me emails. I will read the email, but I have never, ever, ever sent an email. I don't know what it is to send back an email. I pick up this phone and call them back when they send me an email. Because even though I have so much more, I'm so used to the old covenant phone that the new covenant offers me so much more, but I just haven't gotten comfortable with it yet. I'm better than I was. But everybody keeps telling me all that I'm losing by not learning this and sticking too committed to this. They're telling me all that I'm losing. I mean, when I need to learn somewhere to go, I tell people, tell me, and I write it down. You give me directions, I'm gonna take out a pencil and piece of paper, and I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna put that paper in front of my steering wheel, and I'm gonna find where I need to go. But they tell me there's this woman named Siri. Some woman I don't even know. And Siri will talk to me. And Siri will guide me and lead me to where I need to go. I'm told I don't have to write anything down because there's this strange woman in my phone. Some woman I don't even know, never met, want to talk to me and will guide me if I just give the lady a hearing. But I'm so used to the old covenant that give me a piece of paper and I'm good. I'm told that when I get stuck in traffic, I was stuck in traffic not too long ago, I called back the office to find out, is there another way? They tell me there's an app called Waze. And if I would just grow in my understanding of this device, Waze will lead me to where I need to go. In other words, it's my refusal to shift phones that keeps me antiquated and keeps me limited and not fully experiencing all the new technology has to offer. God has a new way of operating. It's called grace. But so many Christians are still attached to the old way. They're not getting and reaping all the benefits that grace has to offer. Grace offers an inexhaustible supply of God's goodness, and it introduces you to a whole new world of operating. So let's look at the ingredients of grace. Let me let you understand the ingredients of this unmerited favor. First of all, we need to understand that grace is always free. Romans 3:24 says, justified freely by his grace. Revelation 21:6 says it's without cost. Revelation 22:13 says it is without cost. There are no strings attached. So let's get this in your mind, because I know it's not normal. Grace is free. Have you ever seen somebody or seen a TV ad and say, this is free, but when you show up, there's a cost? Would you be insulted if you invited somebody over for dinner, you made them a nice meal, and then they said, how much do I owe you? That would be insulting because you didn't invite them over for them to pay. It was free, and you wanted it to be free. The Bible calls grace a gift to emphasize it. On your birthday, you get a gift. You don't pay for the gift on your birthday. All you did to get the gift was be born. And they bring it to your birthday. You don't offer to pay for it. And if somebody brought you a gift on your birthday and then took your money, you no longer can call that free. Romans 4 verses 4 and 5 says it is not a wage to be earned. Let me ask you, at the end of the week when they give you your paycheck, is that a gift? Do they say, let me give you a gift? I want to bless you. No, they pay you for service performed, at least for most people. Some folks just show up, they don't work. But they're paying you for work done because it is earned. Grace cannot be earned. The moment you charge grace, you cancel grace. And you insult the grace giver. So this is a different way of thinking. This is a different way of operating because grace is always free. Not only is grace free, but grace is apart from works. Romans chapter 11, verse 6 puts it this way. He says, but if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. Works cancel grace. You can't work for grace. A lot of non-Christians try to work their way to heaven. They'll tell you, I try to keep the 10 Commandments, I'm nice to my neighbors. They use their work as the basis for them able to earn a spot in glory. When the Bible says you're not saved by works, but grace is apart from what you can't earn grace. A lot of Christians are trying to earn grace. They're trying to work hard enough, go to church hard enough, and maybe God will bless me. If I do this more, maybe I'll get more from God. And they're trying to earn grace. Grace cannot be earned through effort. Now, this all of a sudden, some of you, this should be throwing you off. And if it's throwing you off, good. Because you're in the process of shifting from a flip phone to an iPhone. And that flip sometimes will throw you off. Wait a minute, I'm not supposed to do this and supposed to do that, but let me explain. That looks different under grace. So grace is apart from works. It cannot be earned. Like oil and water, they are mutually exclusive. Okay, now here's the whopper. Here's the whopper. Grace is separate from law. Grace is separate from law. The Old Testament was law. The New Testament is grace, and the two are separate and are not to be mixed. That is the Old Testament law. Romans 6:14 says, you are no longer under law, you are now under grace. Galatians 2:21, Paul says, I do not nullify and cancel out the grace of God by going back to law. Galatians 1 verses 6 and 7, the Apostle Paul says, who has bewitched you? Who has tricked you, Christians in Galatia, that you have left grace? They were being duped by being driven back to the old system. Now, let me clarify. Going back to my phones. There are things in the old that are transferable to the new. The things that this phone does that now this phone does. So it's not that nothing transfers, it's that whatever legitimately transfers, it transfers to a whole new system. The system is what's different. So there are things in the old covenant that do transfer to the new covenant. There are some things that do not transfer. There's some things here that are so outdated that this new phone won't even mess with it. It's a waste of time, and it would denigrate the new phone. But there are certain things that transfer. The ability to receive a signal, that transfers. So it's not that the new covenant of grace doesn't pick up some of the things of the Old Testament law, but it picks it up in a new way and inculcates it in a new system so that you can have more benefit from it when you learn how to use it. So grace is separate from law. When you make a new contract in work or in business or whatever, you nullify the old contract. You may take some things from the old contract and put it in the new contract, but it is a new contract. And you don't then go back to the old contract to operate in the new contract, even though the new contract may put some things in it from the old system. And so this is different. And it is unfortunate that more Christians aren't trained in grace. In fact, one of the reasons that Christians stay defeated for so long is they've never switched systems. Because as you will discover in our series, the old system can't help you. The old system can't fix you. In fact, if you have a wrong relationship to the old system, it'll mess you up more. You're going to find out that if you're operating under that old contract, that old contract can literally mess you up more even though you want to be better. The old system, which you're going to learn about it, will actually cancel out grace. This is what Galatians 2:21 says. I nullify the grace of God. I cancel it out. He's talking about as a Christian. I can cancel grace's power and work in my life. Let me tell you something else about grace. It is comprehensive. It's comprehensive. It includes everything. Ephesians 1:3, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with all spiritual blessings in the heavenly places. It's comprehensive. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8, it says grace is sufficient for every good work. It's comprehensive. The Apostle Peter in 1 Peter 5:10 says that God is the God of all grace. In fact, grace is fully loaded, and it is so fully loaded that Ephesians 2 verse 7 says that in the ages to come, billions of years from now, you will be experiencing more grace. Some of you track with the iPhone forever. iPhone 1, iPhone 2, iPhone 3, iPhone 4, iPhone 5, iPhone 6, iPhone 7, iPhone 8. They skipping 9, they didn't jump to 10. And people just tracking with it. You know why? Because they keep adding a little bit more. Keep adding a little bit more. The only difference is it costs. God says his grace will be more and 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 more forever, and it will all be free. Because it is comprehensive. So I don't know about you, but if I can get all these iPhones for free, if you can get grace for free, because it is comprehensive. Let me tell you another ingredient of grace. And we all need this one. It is powerful. Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5, verse 20. The law came in so that the transgression would increase. Okay, I'll give you a hint about this because I'm going to have a whole sermon on it. The law came in so that transgressions can increase. In other words, the 10 Commandments came in to make you worse off. Because it is called the covenant of condemnation in 2 Corinthians 3. All the law does is show you how sinful you are. Paul said, I was fine until I read the law. You ever been by a paint sign and said, do not touch? And all that sign did was draw out the rebellion that was there. Says, with the law, transgression increases. And that's why the law can't help you get better. The old covenant can't help you. It's important because it reveals some stuff, but it can't help you. But look at what it says. The law came in so that transgression would increase, but where sin increased, grace abounded all the more. So why do you need grace? Because it does what rule keeping under the law cannot do. It's more stronger than your addiction. It's stronger than your sin. It's stronger than your rebellion. It's stronger than the thing that seems to be holding you hostage as a stronghold. He says, where sin increased, got worse, I'm worse off. Grace superabounded and overruled it. So for deliverance from something, you don't need more law, you need more grace. But if you don't understand this, then you're gonna be looking for the 12 steps of this and the 50 steps of that. You're gonna be out of money trying to get better on a spiritual issue. And he says, grace is free, and it is super powerful over sin. Now, let me tell you the problem with grace, because I'm sure that there are those who are having struggles with what I'm saying. You see, I'm using verses, so you see what I'm saying is in the Bible, I'm not making it up, but something sounds a little off. Because anything that's free can be easily abused. All right? Anything that's free can be misused. It doesn't carry the value often when it's free. And so you get a birthday present that you send to somebody else. I don't want this. I ain't paid for it. Or you mishandle it. Or you break it, but you're not worried that you broke it because you ain't have to pay for it. So, hear me now, grace is risky business. And this is where people struggle. I hear it all the time. Well, wait a minute. If God's favor to me is free, and it's going to keep on coming, then why don't I just keep on sinning? Because his grace is free. Paul knew that. That's why he wrote in Romans chapter 6, verse 1, shall we sin that grace may abound? Will grace free me up to do my own thing, to rebel against God? Because after all, I'm saved forever. God's still a gracious God. So because people don't understand grace, there is the possibility that they will misuse it. And Paul recognizes that people can think that way. That's why he had to clarify. So in our series, we want to clarify grace because when you understand it, you are less likely to want to abuse it. It is because we either do not understand it or don't want to understand it that it's so easily abused and misused. It's not because there's something wrong with grace, it's something wrong with us. So grace is risky, and people do misuse it, like people will do with any free gift. St. John chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 of St. John 1. For of his fullness, talking about Jesus, of his fullness we have all received, and grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. If you've ever seen Niagara Falls, or a picture of Niagara Falls, it's this ever-flowing, awesome sight of water that just keeps on coming. That's what he means in verse 16, grace on top of grace. It just keeps flowing. The grace flow is a continuous flow. Or if you are a beach person, it's like saying wave after wave after wave after wave of something. The waves keep coming in. Like a surfer looking for the wave. They just keep on coming. So he says, God is revealed in Christ, grace on top of grace. It just keeps on flowing. He says, verse 17, the law came through Moses. When the law came through Moses, it made Israel a unique civil society because of the laws God gave to Moses. He says, but grace and truth come through Jesus Christ. So watch this. Grace is not merely a theology, it is a person. I call this the conduit of grace. Okay, let's walk with this a moment. It says grace and truth. Grace is intimately tied to truth. In other words, to experience the waves, to experience Niagara Falls continually falling on you, it continues to fall, but for you to get wet, for you to experience it, it is always going to be tied to truth. I have a car, you have a car. This is my fourth car of the same type. So when I get a new car or trade in a car, it's always the same one over the last four. I get basic benefits from my car. I drive, I get to where I want to go. I get basic, I got air conditioning, I have a radio. I got basic things in my car. In none of these vehicles have I bothered to pick up the book about my car that's in my glove compartment. I have never read that book. Because you know what? I'm satisfied with basic car. I get in it, I get to where I want to go, I get back home, I'm good. So I'm satisfied with basic car. Until I have recently discovered that in that book is information about my car that I never ever knew existed. My car can do everything but fly. It's got all kind of little gadgets and things that do things differently, make things sound differently, can make it go up a little bit or down a little bit. It's got all these configurations that I never knew operated. In other words, I didn't have truth about my car, I just had basic ride. If I would have known then what I know now, I would get more benefit out of it. You can't experience more grace without learning more truth. The more truth you learn, based on the Word of God, tied in the system of grace, the more of Jesus you experience. Because grace is a person, not merely a philosophy. And so he says, the law came from Moses, but grace and truth was realized through Jesus Christ. When you're in trouble, you don't need a law book, you need a lawyer. When you're sick, you don't need a medical manual, you need a doctor. When you're in trouble with a criminal, you don't need a penal code, you need a police person. In other words, you need the visible physical manifestation of what the book talks about. Because the physical person, the lawyer, the doctor, the police person, is going to do with you what the book requires. But the book can't fix your problem. unless what you learn from the book is transmitted to you through the person, then you can know the manual and have the manual and not have the experience. Because Jesus must translate from the book to your experience. We'll show you how that's done. But the whole point of it is grace is introducing you and me and us to a whole different way of thinking, operating, and living. And if you will grow in this understanding, and therefore in the knowledge, 2 Peter 3:18, of a person, Jesus Christ, then you will experience God at a level beyond which you have ever experienced before. Because now you won't have to talk about the peace of God, you will have had it. The joy of the Lord, you will have experienced it. The victory that's in him, you'll know what that's about. Because grace is the system that God uses to deliver it. So I want to challenge you to get rid of this. That is the old system, because the only reason you have it is because you're used to it. Because the new system engulfs it, and it gives you so much more. A father had died, and he had a wealth of paintings, very expensive, that he was going to auction off. And so the auctioneer, in accordance with the will, set up an auction to auction off all of his very expensive paintings. People came from everywhere because these were expensive paintings. The auctioneer said, "The auction is now open. Bring out the first piece." They brought out an old picture of a little boy. The boy happened to be the father's son, but it wasn't one of these fancy, expensive paintings. The father had one son, and he put the painting out there. The auctioneer said, "Who would like to make their bid on painting number one?" Nobody bidded because it wasn't one of the fancy pieces. An old gentleman in the back raised his hand and he says, "If nobody will take it, I will." The old man in the back happened to be the servant of the father who died. He says, I'll take that picture." He walked up and the auctioneer gave him the picture. As he walked out, the auctioneer took the gavel and slammed it down and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the auction is now over. It has been completed." The roar from the crowd said, "What in the world are you talking about? You haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. You just brought out this one painting. What are you talking about? It's over. We've just begun." The auctioneer took out a piece of paper, and it was a letter that the father had left. And it simply said this: "When you auction off my painting, the painting of my son should be the first one. And whoever gets the painting of my son, you are to give everything else to."